You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, greetings, everyone. This is Leadership Powered by Common Sense, and I'm your host, Doug Thorpe. Today, we're going to take a journey into the world of, I guess, what I would call big data and being able to be smart about information you might want to go collect for growing your company and making things happen in your markets. My guest is a gentleman named Eric Quanstrom. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Doug. Appreciate it.
And Eric, I'm going to let you kind of give us the flyover of the specific kind of work we're going to be talking about. But even before we get to that, I always like to ask people to give us a little bit of color and backstory on what's your journey been like to get to where you are right now, and maybe where the ideas and inspiration came from for what it is you're doing right now.
Sure thing. So I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Science Technologies, and that's science without an S, an intentional misspelling of the word. Technically, my fifth CMO role in a row, and feel very comfortable in kind of the marketing suite and leading marketing programs at a variety of companies. Just past my 6-year mark here at Science. So we've been doing some exciting things, and I can't wait to tell you and your listeners a little bit more about the company.
Well, that's great. So let's dive right into that. What is Science all about?
Yeah, sure. Science at its heart, even in our tagline, I guess I have it over my shoulder here for the video portion or anyone watching this. We like to say sales conversations start here. And so our mission in life is to help our client companies grow. We're traditionally known as a software and services company, so we help them in a variety of ways. We're famous, I guess, in the world for being ranked as kind of the top or number one outbound lead generation services company by a variety of third-party sources, and that really comes on the back of us being able to help fill pipeline, start those sales conversations at the top of the funnel, hand them off to the various sales teams and organizations that we work with for brands large and small across a variety, quite a lot of industries, to be perfectly honest. And, I think more of the interesting parts are in how we do that, and even some of the tools that we use to do that. Perhaps we can get deeper into those strategies and tactics on this podcast, because I think that's where the real interesting opinions and facts and data and all the other things we bring to bear lie.
Absolutely. No, I very much would like to get into that. You and I have had that opportunity to have a little bit of discussion about the real nuts and bolts of what makes your magic and significantly differentiates you from a lot of other providers. And, speaking as an entrepreneur myself, we collectively get inundated daily with people who profess to be able to help us with lead gen, sales growth, more traffic, more conversations, more opportunities. And, you hear a lot of varieties of things, but at the root of many of them, it's good old-fashioned cold calling that to me, depending on who you talk to, that fundamentally doesn't work anymore, because people are kind of jaundiced for answering their phone with seeing a strange number they're not familiar with.
Yeah, I would respectfully disagree with a lot of those people who say that the cold calling and more specifically multi-channel outbound doesn't work, because we prove on the daily that it does. I think that cold outreach in general has a bad reputation, largely from techniques of the past that were largely spray and pray and really met the wall. I almost liken it to a car hitting a wall at 60 miles an hour of irrelevancy. I think that the relevancy wall is probably the biggest wall that exists in anyone's day, right? In anyone's time, and is this worth my consideration? Is this worth me paying attention to? And I think that relevancy should ride every one of your go-to-market motions. If it doesn't, then you're probably doing it wrong. And you're probably being a nuisance and an irritation with everything that you're doing. Relevancy, however, comes in a lot of different forms. And I think that it's worth probably unpacking this, peeling the onion, so to speak, on how to get to relevancy with any go-to-market motion. And, I can launch in if you prefer to go down that.
First, let me say your objection is duly noted and fair. My statement was very broad brush, and I think it was in respect to the large preponderance of these independent providers that are doing that spray and pray kind of thing. They claim they're going to try to niche down and identify a profile and go after only those people, but the process by which they attempt to dial that in, I know I've tried 6 or 8 different providers that have professed to do that and do it well, and I'm sad to say I've gotten literally 0 conversions out of it.
Yeah.
And many of which, in various forms, the way the discussion unfolds and ends up is I somehow didn't do a good job of explaining what my, primary candidate is. And it's like, well, okay, fine. Let's forget about the 6 hours I spent talking to you about who that was and what they needed to be doing. And, but it goes on and on. So let's talk about the relevancy issue and what are the different layers and elements that you guys try to help with?
Yeah, I think if you were to throw kind of a large kind of tarp over Outbound, which we can think of as bringing a direct message to a relevant prospect. So obviously the first kind of like consideration there in the stack is who should we be talking to? And I like to divide up Outbound into kind of like 3 primary flavors of the who. So the first of which, probably the most commonly practiced, is what I would call list-led outbound. And this is basically where solely as a vendor, solely as a service provider, solely as an organization, you would create your own ideal customer profile or some form of a list. Already better than spray and pray, because now you're taking some thought, you're rigorous with your analysis of who do you think would be your next best future customers. And the more specific you can get, the more you can pay attention to existing buying groups and how those buying groups unfold. Who's the first conversation with? Who's the last conversation with? Like, who are decision influencers? Who are product champions? Or, people that might actually be worth having in a buying group for a sale to occur. Having rigor around that thought as to who makes the list is a worthwhile and frankly, you can't skip the step exercise. That's kind of like bucket 1, if you will, on flavors of outbound. Flavor 2 is what I like to call intent-led outbound. Now, same kind of exercise should have been performed around an ICP, but there's a variety of tools. Science has one ourselves, but there's a variety of tools on the market today that are now in place to help people glean in-market buying activity across the real-time web around topics, keywords, or areas of promise for your business. So for instance, if I were to say lead generation services might be a very interesting area of promise or topic for science, I might be very concerned with, okay, how can I find companies that are interested in that topic? And thus an intent, kind of list and prioritization and effort ensues as far as an outbound, how you might go to market. But I actually don't think that that's the first and best flavor of outbound. So we talked about list-led as our kind of number 3, intent-led as our number 2. And I think there's a number 1 with a bullet. And that number 1 is what I like to call intent or inbound-led outbound. So I'm mixing a little thing here together, which is technically flavor of intent, but a prospect visits your website, visits your web property, visits something where you have first-party data occurring, and that prospect matches your ICP. Now, the beauty of living in 2023 is that because first-party data exists, and oh, by the way, science has tools for this as well, you can start to de-anonymize your web traffic. And for the people that fit your ideal customer profile, I strongly suggest that there can be no better prioritization of who to reach out to and why than the people that might have already experienced your brand and been on your website. And so 3 flavors of outbound, all 3 of which I kind of give a little, thumbnail sketch or cliff notes on how to think through when to use them. But then, when, there's a variety of sequencing, there's a variety of messaging, there's a variety of tactics that you can use in any one of those 3 for additional success. But I really like to talk about the 3 flavors just so that people can think about, if I'm going to prioritize efforts, how might I do so across each one of those kind of like use cases?
Yeah. Well, I think business owners probably definitely know about the first one, sort of the outbound, build a list. Maybe I have a list, and I do have perhaps a customer base to call upon and can define that profile of what felt successful. So getting those guys together is not bad. I'm intrigued by that. The main one, as you mentioned, the prospect that already comes to the website. And as I recall, when you and I first talked, Eric, I think we were talking in terms of, a lot of people get really excited about the 2% or 3% that hit a website and punch a call to action button. And you think, I'm gold now. They're now in my funnel. But the question is, what are you doing with the 97% that didn't hit that call to action? They did, in fact, see your site. They might have even paged through it 3, 4, 5 pages deep, but then they chose to go away for what is. So it's the proverbial, I'll go so far as to call it the empty shopping cart kind of thing. And that's, I think, the intriguing dimension that a lot of people are probably leaving on the table.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think you did a really nice job of describing that. And what you really touched on is the bane of all marketers like myself's existence, which is, here in the 21st century, the public website is where all the action happens for most marketers. The content that we produce to build that website, the pillar pages, the blogs, the ebooks, the whitelist, the white papers, the guides, all of it are living on generally our websites. You could include social media profiles for, a greater constellation or effort. But at the end of the day, most B2B businesses, and that's really where I'd love to kind of hit and stick in talking, they're using their public website as kind of the hub for most of their go-to-market motions. And the bane of our existence is that when people visit that hub, they usually do nothing. They come, they read, they explore pages, and they go away. And that's kind of normal, to be honest. And you cited the statistics, and there's reams and reams of them by industry, by individual company. Everyone can get this number. But most websites have some forms of calls to action. And so measuring, unique visitor to did they take you up on that call to action, whether it was to meet with sales, schedule a demo, whatever it may be, typically those are in the, again, 97 to even 99% of overall traffic. And so my point is simply that that's where the game is being played already with interest in your brand. There is a cost, whether you choose to recognize it or not, to bringing people to your website. Right. It's generally not free, especially if you're using paid advertising to bring them to your website. Oftentimes we even label this cost per click or pay per click. And so ultimately the justification for any of those efforts, I think, is well matched or well suited to combine marketing with sales back into that inbound led outbound approach. So as long as the profile of the individual that you de-anonymize fits your ICP, when you catch them essentially doing nothing, it's well worth your time to bring the fight back to them. It's well worth your time to reach back out after they've been on your website. And the reason for that is actually a really simple one and very congruent with kind of buying behavior. analyst firm after analyst firm have produced reports over the last decade or so that really talk about the buyer's journey. And one of the main findings that every last one of them come to, and it's really common sense, the title of this podcast, right? So this may be the most commonsensical thing that I'm about to say. Most buyers engage when they're ready.
Yes.
With any sales organization, with any vendor, with any website. And so the smart marketer, the smart head of sales, in my opinion, is the one that gets the catbird seat, is the one that puts themselves in pole position, is the one that kind of like takes that buyer's journey and starts to fit right into the middle of it, or be the first one in, so to speak, as the buyer, or buyers, plural, are making decisions, are synthesizing information, are researching what the category, the space, the solution is all about.
Yeah. So if I can take it one more level and maybe trying to connect the dots here. So what we're saying is, for that 97, 98, 99% that hit the website and don't act, they may well be researching and gathering data to satisfy their own process, whatever mental process they've got for making decisions. And you're saying if you go ahead and follow up on that inquiry and try to connect with them while the thought process is fresh in front of mind, you run a higher probability of getting attention and making the connection.
Without a doubt. In fact, I mean, I'll be kind of farcical or comical for a reason to make my point, but when you own and run a B2B website, it's not as if the traffic kind of like accidentally finds their way to your site. Oh, I was searching for great summer reading. What's the new Grisham novel? Oh, science.com? Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, people are generally finding you because of, again, content or rankings or advertising or referrals in your areas of promise. And therefore, people are exploring. They're doing their homework. They're researching. Some of them may not even be what we would call active buyers at that point. They may not even be active buyers in their own mind, right? Buying is a largely ad hoc activity that is very loosely defined in most organizations that it happens in. Only in the larger organizations that we call them enterprises do even professional buyers exist. They're usually called procurement. And so when most buying is happening, it's done, again, very randomly, very sporadically, very, like if you were to chart and graph it out, and again, a lot of the analyst firms are really good at this. They have graphs that look like a treasure map,
Yeah.
It's all over the place, because that's typical buying behavior.
Well, and as I'm thinking about it, so classic learnings as a business owner says, well, if you want more sales, first thing you got to have is traffic to your website. So you spend the money, you do your advertising, you work on your SEO, and you try to get your presence and ranking elevated on Google so that you're on that first page of the search page. When that person does put in a search term, that you definitely want to be found. That's all good, and that's all important. But the point is, as we're speaking here, the average buyer is not ready to pull the trigger that moment he clicks that first link.
Right.
They're probably rationalizing, doing some research, and heaven knows we've all been programmed now to look at reviews, and you get a lead on an idea of a source to get a solution. You're going to go look at reviews, you're going to try to get referrals, and you're going to do a lot of other things before you even maybe click the link and hit the call to action to schedule a demo or schedule a call or whatever. So what I'm hearing here is the real thing we're focused on is this opportunity to get in the middle of that as a provider and accelerate the connection point.
Yeah. And I think that what I'd also love to point out is we're talking about one of the greatest untalked about trends of our generation. I'm old enough to know, we both are, so we can remember these days when the sales profession really tilted around information asymmetry. Before the commercial web, when you wanted to go buy a car, there was a extremely high probability that the person selling you that car knew far more about the automobile than you did, right? Information asymmetry. Really good possibility, or probability, I should say, in those times that was true of just about every industry out there and most sales organizations. That's no longer true today, and it has ceased to be true. In fact, I would argue with new AI tools, especially like the advent of ChatGPT, that the information asymmetry is all but turned on its entire head, right? So we're not short. There's no dearth of information. In fact, we're almost in the opposite problem. We have too much information. We're drowning in information, and it's overloading our ability to oftentimes make decisions. And this is why I think sales still exists. I think this is a very noble role for sales to take and make, which is to make sense of the world for our buyers and thus provide them value. And so I can think of no better reason when, again, somebody that matches your ideal customer profile, that you say, this would be an ideal person or company for me to sell to. And now I kind of walk forward the sales process, or move forward the sales process from that kind of like information overload standpoint into my normal sales process to provide super value to the person that I'm reaching out to. Also gives me a great reason, back to where we started this conversation around relevance, gives me a great reason for any of my outreach in the first place.
Yeah. So let's bring it back to what you're doing there at Science, the secret sauce, so to speak, in tapping into and capturing that traffic that is coming. What are the tools and steps and procedures to really accelerate that?
Sure. So we've built a variety of software tools for each one of those phases or buckets of outbound that I talked about before, as well as for our own SDRs, sales development reps, and teams to use to be more efficient, proficient, and effective at their outreach. So I'll start from the forward back. With inbound-led outbound, I think that the key leverage point for that go-to-market motion is you have to be able to track visits to your website and then match against an identity graph of who those people are. Right. So I'm setting aside, of course, the form fills, those 1% to 2% of people that self-identify, give you their email and or phone number, and ultimately are probably already on the path to scheduling a meeting and meeting with your sales team, if that's the way you handle your sales cycle. So we have a product, it's called Science Go Show, that is able to be, placed onto, in the form of JavaScript code, any website, and then match against our identity graph to determine who that person is, who that company is, what department they're in, seniority level. And then, of course, we pair that actually with our Science Go data product for down to the actual individual contact level information. So business email, phone number, LinkedIn profile, and other title, who they are, where they are, kind of information. So that's number one on inbound-led outbound. We also produce a number of tools for helping people close and convert deals while they're hot, while on your website. So we have a product called Science Go Chat and Go Schedule that allows for essentially a two-way bot-led or AI-led chat, as well as booking meetings on the spot for those that are interested. So those are another kind of two that help with inbound-led outbound, in my opinion. As I kind of move backwards down the stack, Science Go Intent is our intent product that helps facilitate the prioritization effort for essentially reaching out to what might be called in-market buyers. And that tool also works in conjunction. It's actually part of Science Go Data, where the data that would be part of any lead list, so list-led outbound, we can do that too. We have over 200 million records in our database, if you will, the Science Go Data product, and you can query it and run a ton of very targeted searches to get at the right ICP from a million different angles, whether those be geographic angles, industry angles, title and seniority in an org chart angles, and then have profile or contact information that, again, comes with information about how to contact them, email, phone, social profile information.
And then at that point, once the profile identification is made, you can build and launch your outreach and whatever else you're doing, whether it's email or text or
Yes.
call or anything, whatever sequence you've determined to be the right way to do it.
Absolutely. And we have a variety of tools that, we use our own sequencer. It's called Science Go Engage. We have our own dialer, if you will, for making, efficient phone dials in a call block called Science Go Dialer. And then what's maybe most exciting to all of us over here at Science is we've also gotten bit by the AI bug in a very, very big way, where we think that AI tools, especially those built on GPT-4, are super exciting for what they enable from a productivity standpoint, our agents, our people, our team members to do. So we leverage a number of those tools, including what we call Science Go Expert AI, that each one of our clients that is utilizing our services, we actually outfit them with a license. And what we've done before that license is built is we feed information to our large learning models, right? So our LLM large language models. Forgive me on the L mispronunciation. But our large language models allow us to kind of feed all the data about a client's business, about a client's industry, about a client's personas that they would be targeting and their ICP, all of the publicly available information about that client. So their website and everything attached to it, as well as anything else we feed up and learn about that business. Because when we're doing our outreach as them, we want to be essentially as knowledgeable on their business as they are. And so we use this AI tool to influence how we write campaigns, how we build sales playbooks, how we message to their personas. And so that AI shortcut or mental prosthetic is super useful. And again, we're very excited about the results we've been seeing using it.
And how are client companies receiving that when they understand it's somewhat AI generated content, AI inspired content, maybe is the way to say it.
Yeah, no one really knows that it's I guess non-human, and I wouldn't even say that that's final form of any messaging that goes out. It's not like an automated system where the human is out of the loop. We're still leveraging humans, quite a lot of humans actually, in everything that we're doing. We're just enabling tools to be assistive, and allow them to kind of be their best, most efficient selves as they're doing sales development work.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. Excuse me. That's what I'm hearing in most cases with businesses I'm talking to of late. They've caught the AI bug, but they see it as assistance to glean content or structure or information that they might have otherwise forgotten about or not thought about. And, most experts will tell you they've probably forgotten as much as some people have yet to know about a subject.
That's probably true.
And I think at least the early forays into AI that I've done personally in my own work, the things that have come back have prompted a lot of those little data points and factoids that I might have forgotten long ago, but now they've been able to bubble back up and go, yeah, that's pretty meaningful. That's a good part.
I'll also say this on a personal level. Using AI to me is a really interesting expression of when you feed a large language model 170 billion parameters, which is currently the use case for GPT-4. The patterns that exist in all that information, all that data that is being consumed and forms the base and the bedrock of the LLM, to me is quite fascinating, because what I see is the ability for a tool to almost transcend human thought. Like one of the best prompt kind of like tips that I could give anybody, and tell me if this doesn't get you far better outputs and results, is to literally tell the AI to write in the voice of. And ultimately, when you can give it that prompt and think about any of your favorite authors, think about any material that would have been part of that, kind of LLM being built that's already been consumed, you have like this crazy good replica of exactly everything that again, voice and author ever wrote, already built into the answers that you're going to get reflected back. Be almost the same as if I asked the authors themselves to write a novel or write any kind of output in their own voice and then return it. It's almost like putting them on staff.
Yeah, interesting. That is very interesting. So, how does a B2B type company, how do they typically set this up and get going? Is it a function of pick and choose among the offerings, or?
Yeah, we definitely support both the kind of like comprehensive, all-in-one, all you can eat, if you will, buffet style offering. We also do sell our software standalone and separately. Really depends on the use case and what a business is looking to get accomplished. I think still to this day, and hopefully this is somewhat of a testament to the brand that we've built over the last few years. A lot of people have come to know us for our outbound managed services and what we're able to do for lead generation, kind of in the space. So like our people delivering appointments is typically the value proposition that a lot of companies come to us for on the regular. The software pieces really on our platform are still relatively new, and we're super excited about the directions of them because we get to use them ourselves. We're customer zero here at Science, which is kind of cool. Nothing we've built, we don't consume. I hate the phrase "eat our own dog food," so I'll say instead, we drink our own champagne and we love it.
Yeah.
And it's effervescent. So, so ultimately that's kind of our name of the game. And so anyone listening to this that might be curious, you can go to science.com, again, that's science without the S, and check out any and all of our offerings. And then, let our sales team help you synthesize into kind of like getting you where you want to go as far as your own growth is concerned.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Eric, this has been great. Thank you so much. And what an incredible idea. And I knew from the first time, sorry, video went out again. I knew from the first time you and I had talked that this is pretty compelling. And what's the phrase? You had me at 97% when we talked about that. Because I know, again, being totally transparent and reflective, I've spent a lot of time and energy in my world on trying to get traffic. And, when I realize that 97% of the visitors I get, and I've got a hard data that shows people clicking and visiting, are not going to act unless I do something otherwise to get into their consciousness. And having a simple call to action or a really sexy ebook or tripwire or offering like that is not enough to flip that conversion, because as soon as they browse away or swipe away, then we're done.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of normal behavior too. People love control. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I love control. You love control, right? Like when I'm browsing a website, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I most people, it's funny if you ask them, or a quick survey, how many websites do you visit in a given day? I think a lot of people would be surprised at just how many sites they go to. And it's in the hundreds for most, kind of like B2B workers and or executives. And so, the thinking there is we've gotten really good. Our heuristics are well developed on, kind of like surfing the web, going to B2B websites and doing exactly nothing, right? Like, at least as far as the vendor is concerned, like self-identification, or, I want to move beyond just kind of like, an ambient relationship.
Right. Well, and in the just in the mega space, Amazon and Google have been doing this for a long time, and I still talk to people that are amazed at the fact that they might be sitting in their pajamas late one night browsing Amazon for a particular little widget or a toy for the kid or something like that. And for the next 2 weeks, if they do a Google search, that is something about that thing's going to pop up in that sidebar.
Sure. Yeah.
And you're going, how did they know I was looking at that? Well, it's all the science behind it, not your science, but the data science behind it.
So true. I mean, remarketing or retargeting, depending on the flavor you like or word you like best, is proven to be effective. Again, reminding people and getting familiar. Familiarity is the marketer's best friend, as far as I'm concerned, right? Because we like to buy from entities, people that we know, like, and trust. And the more familiar somebody is or something is, the more we know, like, and trust them.
Right. Well, again, talking about generational and age related, I go back many, many years, and in marketing speak back then, the one thing you wanted to achieve was top of mind presence.
Yep.
And the principle behind top of mind presence in the old definitions of marketing was back to what we were saying. People are not necessarily buying on the spot. They buy through a process of thinking and analysis and evaluation. And unless you stay top of mind, i.e., you're on some kind of little short list, when they finally get ready to buy, they may ask you for a quote or ask you for an engagement or ask you for that demo so that now they can factor that into their buying decision. But if you don't stay top of mind, you're not going to get that invitation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, one product that I didn't mention that's kind of interesting, about a little less than a year ago, Science actually also stood up a product called Science Go Digital. And this is our own demand side platform, or DSP, that enables targeted advertising, primarily display, where we can do things like retargeting or remarketing. We even like to integrate advertising runs into what we call pre-targeting. So if you've got that ICP, there's no better way to start the familiarity and start the kind of awareness than advertising fed directly to that ideal customer profile list going forward. And don't be surprised, and we never are, when those ads produce people getting curious, clicking links, and ultimately then going to our website or our client's website when they're using the product. And voila, you've created demand, and now you're are in position to potentially service that demand. Fascinating.
Well, Eric, we're about up on time for today, but thank you so much for coming in and sharing all this. It's amazing work, and you shared your contact info so people can check it out and get in touch. But one last time, thank you for sitting in.
That was my pleasure, Doug. Fun conversation. Thank you.
Yes. And as always, folks, I like to remind you that we do have a video version of this over on YouTube, channel by the same name. Hop over there. We've got a lot of fun things going on with a membership community that we've started. We've got a little merchandise available and all kinds of things to support the show. But for now, we're going to sign off, say goodbye, and wish you the best. Take care.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.